The human guest at the alien feast. Marco never meant to be at the alien feast. He was just a mechanic, a human working at the outer spaceport on planet Keldra. He fixed old ships and rusty engines. Nothing special. But one day, while returning a repaired shuttle to a wealthy alien noble, he was suddenly invited. "You, human," a tall green-skinned alien guard called. "You have been selected to attend the great feast of Baron Varkul. Be honored." Before Marco could explain that he wasn't a guest, the aliens pulled him along. They gave him fine clothes, strange glowing robes that itched his skin, and they led him into the Baron's great palace. The feast hall was massive, walls made of dark crystal, floating lights in the air, and music that sounded like thunder mixed with birdsong. Dozens of alien nobles were seated, laughing, drinking, and telling war stories. Creatures with horns, tails, and glowing eyes filled the room. And there, sitting at the highest seat, was Baron Varkul. He was huge, his skin like stone, and his eyes cold and gold. Marco felt completely out of place. He sat at the edge of the table, trying to stay quiet. The food in front of him was strange, something that looked like purple meat, and a drink that bubbled like lava. He picked at it nervously. The Baron was in a good mood. He had won a great trade deal, and everyone was celebrating. And then it happened. The Baron stood up, raised his cup, and shouted, "Today I am generous, let this feast be remembered, and to show how generous I am..." He pointed at Marco. "I give this human a gift." Laughter rolled through the hall. Marco blinked, confused. The Baron clapped his hands. From a side door, a young alien woman stepped into the hall. She was beautiful, even by alien standards. Her skin was a soft silver blue, her long hair shimmered like moonlight, and her large bright eyes were full of sadness. "This," said the Baron, "is my daughter, Princess Yelra. I give her to the human as a joke bride." Everyone burst out laughing, even the guards chuckled. Marco's mouth dropped, and he stood quickly. "Wait, I think there's a mistake." But before he could finish, the Baron waved him off. "No mistake, let this be a funny tale for years to come, my daughter and a human, a perfect joke." Marco looked at Yelra. She didn't laugh. Instead, she looked at the floor, then walked toward him slowly. Marco didn't understand. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. "I accept," Yelra said softly. Her voice was clear. Her eyes met his. Gasps filled the hall. Some stopped laughing. Baron Varkul frowned. "It was a joke, girl. You don't have to agree." But Yelra said again, louder, "I accept the bond." The room grew quiet. The Baron waved again, annoyed. "Fine, take her. Let the joke play out." He sat down and drank deeply. That night, Marco was taken to guest chambers in the palace. The guards left Yelra with him. Marco was still confused, pacing the room. Yelra stood quietly by the door. "You don't really have to stay here," Marco said. "We can tell them it was a mistake. I'll explain." She walked closer and sat down on the floor. "I meant it," she said. Marco turned. "But why? Why say yes to someone like me? Your father just wanted to laugh." She hugged her knees and looked at the floor. "Because no one ever accepted me before. Not really." Marco sat down across from her. "But you don't even know me. I know you didn't laugh. You didn't look at me like a thing. You looked surprised. And kind." She looked up. "That's more than anyone here has ever done." Marco stayed silent for a moment. Outside, the alien moon rose. Its light came through the crystal windows and lit Yelra's face. She looked tired. Not just from the night, but from something deeper, like someone who had carried a heavy burden for too long. "You can rest here," Marco said gently. "I'll sleep on the couch." But Yelra didn't move. She looked at him with sad eyes and whispered, "Thank you, husband." The word made his chest tighten. He didn't know what he had just become part of, but something told him this was no joke anymore. Marco woke up the next morning hoping everything had been a strange dream. But the soft hum of alien lights above him and the sweet scent of foreign flowers told him it was all real. He was still in the Baron's palace, and when he turned his head, he saw her, Yelra. She was curled on the cold floor, using her arm as a pillow. Her long silver-blue hair was spread around her like silk. She looked peaceful, but also fragile, like a flower blooming in a battlefield. He got up, grabbed a spare blanket, and gently placed it over her. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. Marco stood silently, unsure what to do next. Was he really married? Was this binding? Would he have to leave with her? Would the aliens allow it? Before he could think further, the heavy metal door creaked open. 3 guards entered, tall and grim. One of them said sharply, "The ceremony begins in 1 hour. Prepare." "Ceremony?" Marco repeated, confused. "Yes," the guard said. "You accepted the Baron's gift. According to the customs of Keldra, this must be made official. The union shall be registered before the High Flame." The door closed behind them as they left. Marco stood frozen for a moment, then turned toward Yelra. She was awake now. Her eyes, soft and full of emotion, met his. "You can still say no," Marco said. "We can talk to them. I don't want to force you into anything." Yelra sat up slowly, the blanket slipping off her shoulder. "It's not force," she said quietly. "It's the first time I've had a choice." Marco didn't understand fully, but he nodded anyway. "All right. Then we do it your way." An hour later, the palace's inner temple was full of noble guests. Tall aliens in ceremonial robes stood around a glowing fire. Baron Varkul sat on his throne, half amused, half annoyed. His eyes didn't meet his daughter's once. He only looked at Marco with a slight smirk, as if expecting the human to break and run away. Marco stood in front of the high flame with Yelra beside him. She looked calm, graceful. Yet something flickered behind her eyes. Memories, maybe. Fears. Hope. The high priestess spoke in the ancient alien tongue, then switched to the common language. "Today, we witness an unusual bond. A human and a daughter of Keldra. Laughter may have brought them here, but respect will carry them forward. If their hearts are true, let the fire bless their unity." The priestess offered Marco a strange stone. It was warm and pulsing, almost like a living heart. "Speak your vow, human." Marco took a breath. His voice wasn't strong, but it was steady. "I don't know your ways," he said, "but I will protect Yelra. I'll treat her with respect. I'll walk beside her, not in front or behind. I don't see her as a gift. I see her as a person, and I promise, I won't laugh at her." Silence filled the temple. Yelra took the stone. Her voice was softer, almost trembling. "I vow to stand by this man. He did not choose me for power. He did not laugh when others did. He saw me when my own father did not. I offer him what I am, nothing more, nothing less." The stone glowed brightly, then faded. The high flame roared for a moment, then returned to its normal state. "It is done," the priestess said. Some nobles clapped politely. Others looked shocked. Baron Varkul simply stood, nodded once, and walked out of the room without a word. That night, Marco and Yelra were placed in a small living chamber far from the noble wing. It was quiet and simple. There was only one bed. Marco began arranging the floor again, but Yelra touched his arm. "You don't have to sleep on the floor." Marco turned, unsure. "I just don't want to make things uncomfortable." She gave him a small, tired smile. "It's already been uncomfortable all my life. But tonight, I feel warm. Not because of the fire, but because of you." They both sat on the edge of the bed. Yelra looked at her hands. "You don't understand what you've done, do you?" Marco blinked. "Marry an alien princess after a bad joke?" She smiled again, but this time it was sad. "You gave me freedom. You made my father's joke real. And now he can't control me anymore." Marco leaned forward. "He really never cared for you?" She shook her head. "He saw me as weak. My powers never appeared, so I was useless. Just a girl. He planned to marry me off eventually. But this way, it slipped from his control. Marco looked at her carefully. And are you okay with me? A stranger? Yelra looked into his eyes, searching. You're the first person who asked. Outside, stars filled the alien sky. Inside, two strangers sat close. Not because of love. Not yet. But because both had been alone for too long. And for the first time, neither felt unwanted. The ship landed with a hard jolt, shaking dust into the air. Marco looked through the small window beside him. The moon's surface was gray, cracked, and silent. There were no buildings, no cities, just a lonely station at the edge of a cliff, and wide, empty plains beyond. Baron Varkul had sent them here to enjoy their marriage. But Marco knew better. This was exile. The Baron had lost control of Yelra, and the only way to get rid of her without blood was to make it look like a gift. As they stepped off the ship, the pilot handed Marco a box. 2 weeks' supplies. After that, you'll have to contact the trade station, if you survive. Before Marco could ask what that meant, the ship lifted off again, leaving them in silence. Yelra didn't seem surprised. Her eyes scanned the empty land like she had been here before. This was one of my father's old mining outposts, she said. He shut it down after the workers went missing. Missing? Marco asked. She nodded slowly. They said something lived in the storms. A sharp wind howled across the plain. Marco adjusted his jacket. Let's get inside. The station was made of old steel and cracked glass. Lights flickered inside. Dust covered every surface. It smelled like rust and silence. Marco found a small generator and managed to get power, running in 2 rooms. That night, they sat in the main room near a flickering heater. The stars above the cracked ceiling blinked through broken glass. It's not exactly a honeymoon, Marco said with a dry smile. Yelra looked at him. This is better than any palace, at least here I can breathe. Marco leaned back against the wall. Do you think your father will try to bring you back? No, she said. Not unless he needs something. Marco didn't like the sound of that. What kind of something? Yelra hesitated, then whispered. A child. An heir. Something he can use. He looked at her confused. But you said your powers never appeared. She nodded. But mixed bloodlines. Sometimes they awaken things. If I have a child with you, it might not be like me. Marco stared at the heater for a long moment. So even here, we're not really free. She reached out and touched his hand. No one is ever truly free. But with you, I feel safe. The heater hummed. Outside, the wind picked up again. This time it sounded like something was howling. They spent the next few days cleaning the station, fixing broken systems, and trying to make it livable. Marco worked on the air filters while Yelra found old data logs. Most were empty, but one had a report about strange sounds in the night, unseen movement, disappearing guards. On the 5th night it happened. Marco woke up to a strange scratching sound outside the station wall. It was soft, almost like claws on metal. He grabbed a small light and moved quietly through the hallway. The scratching grew louder. Then, silence. He opened the side hatch just a crack. Nothing. Just gray dust and wind. He stepped out slowly. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the hill. Marco froze. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't a machine. It was alive and tall, moving, on 4 legs but shaped like no animal he knew. It paused in the distance as if sensing him. Then it turned and disappeared into the darkness. When he returned, Yelra was waiting. You saw it, she said softly. You knew it was real? I dreamed of it as a child, she whispered. The thing in the storm. It watches. It waits. Marco looked outside again. And now it knows we're here. For the next few days, they didn't leave the station. At night, they heard the footsteps outside, sometimes scratching, sometimes breathing, Marco stood guard with a tool in his hand, not a weapon, but all he had. Then one night the storm came. A real one. Lightning cracked across the moon's sky. Dust flew so thick it blocked the stars. The power flickered. The walls groaned under the wind, and then something hit the door. Hard. Marco rushed to block it. Yelra ran to help. The door bent inward. Something was trying to get in. They held it with their bodies, pushing back against the force. Then Yelra screamed, not in fear, but in fury. Her eyes lit up with blue fire. The door shook again. Then silence. The power returned, and the storm was gone. Marco turned to Yelra. Her eyes were still glowing, her skin flickering with strange light. "You said you had no power," he said quietly. "I didn't," she said, breathless. "But something is waking up." They sat there together, exhausted. Marco didn't know what was out there. He didn't know what was inside Yelra either. But deep in his chest, he felt it. The joke marriage, the exile, the silence. It was all leading to something much, much bigger. The next morning, Marco found Yelra standing outside the station, barefoot on the cracked soil. The storm had passed, but clouds still hung low over the silent moon. Her hair flowed behind her, touched by the cold wind, and her silver-blue skin shimmered under the weak sunlight. She looked like she belonged to another world, a world he couldn't yet understand. Marco walked up beside her. "You should be inside. It's freezing." "I don't feel it," Yelra whispered. "Not anymore." He watched her carefully. "Last night, what happened to you?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she knelt and touched the ground. "This place, this moon, it used to be part of something greater. Long ago, before my father ever claimed it." Marco waited silently. "My mother was not like the others," she began softly. "She was not a noble. She came from the outer forests of Keldra, where old blood still runs strong. The kind of blood my father feared." He frowned. "Feared?" Yelra nodded slowly. "The ancient families, the ones with power, once ruled through fear and silence. My father married my mother for that power. But when I was born, they expected me to awaken with abilities. I didn't. At least not then. So, he cast her aside, called her cursed, banished her. I never saw her again." Marco felt something twist in his chest. "And you?" "I became a burden," she said. "A silent child, a failure. That's when he began calling me his joke daughter. He kept me hidden. No one was to know that the mighty Baron Varkul had birthed a weak child with a common woman." Marco sat down on the edge of a broken metal container. "Why tell me now?" She turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly. "Because something has changed. Ever since we came here, since the storm, I feel something in me waking. I dream of fire, of voices I don't recognize calling my name. And when I touched the door last night, I felt power." Marco remembered how her eyes had glowed, how the storm itself had seemed to pause, as if listening to her. "You're not a joke," he said softly. "No," she replied, her voice firmer now. "But I was treated like one for so long that I believed it." They walked back to the station together. Inside, Marco began checking the systems. The storm had damaged one of the outside solar arrays. He sighed and stood up, grabbing his tools. "I need to fix this before the power fails." Yelra rose beside him. "I'll go with you." "No," Marco said quickly. "It's not safe." She looked at him calmly. "Neither of us is safe. Not here. But we are together. That matters." He didn't argue after that. As they worked outside, the quiet was strange. Too quiet. Marco kept glancing toward the hills. He felt like something watched them from the shadows. But when he turned, there was nothing. Yelra suddenly said, "Do you believe in fate?" Marco gave a short laugh. "I believe in broken engines and bad luck, that's about it." She smiled gently. "I used to believe I had none. But now, I think we met for a reason. He looked at her, serious. You think your father knew this would happen? That you'd awaken here? No, she said, shaking her head. He thought he was throwing me away. But maybe the stars were waiting for that. That night, as they rested inside, Yelra shared stories from her hidden life, how the other noble children were trained in battle, politics, and speech, while she was given books about old myths and locked away from court. My mother once told me, she said softly, power that waits is stronger than power that shouts. I never understood it. Until now. Marco reached for her hand. Your mother sounds wise. She was, Yelra whispered. She said one day my soul would burn brighter than any of their weapons. I thought she was only trying to comfort me. But now, I'm starting to believe her. The fire inside the small heater flickered low. Shadows danced across the walls. Yelra turned toward him, eyes thoughtful. I need to tell you something else. Marco sat up. What is it? When I held the stone during the ceremony, I felt something spark, like lightning inside me. And now, I'm certain. He tilted his head. Certain of what? Yelra placed a hand gently on her stomach. I'm with child. Marco blinked. For a long time, he said nothing. But the silence between them was not heavy. It was full. Are you sure? He finally asked. She nodded slowly. Yes. I felt it. It's not just a life. It's something different. Strong. Like the power I never had has gone into the child. Marco stood up, unsure what to feel. Fear? Joy? Confusion? But all, he said was, then we'll protect them, no matter what. Yelra smiled. We already are. Outside, something watched from the hills, its eyes glowing faintly. It had felt the shift, it had smelled the awakening, and it knew. The joke was, over something ancient was rising. The sky above the moon had never looked so dark. A cold wind blew through the cracks of the old station, carrying with it the low hum of distant thunder. But it wasn't just weather. Marco could feel it deep in his bones. Something was coming. Something powerful and angry. He checked the power levels, but the system lights blinked red. One more strong gust, and they'd be sitting in the dark. Yelra stood by the window, her hands gently resting over her stomach. She hadn't said much, all morning. Her silver-blue skin looked even paler in the dim light, and her eyes were filled with worry. Marco finally broke the silence. We need to prepare. That thing, the one outside, I don't think it's gone. She nodded without turning. It's not. I feel it, like a shadow breathing too close. He gathered tools, wires, and parts, doing his best to secure the station, but there were too many cracks, too many weak spots. They had only hours before the storm hit full force. I've seen storms before, Marco muttered, tightening a panel. But this feels personal. It is, Yelra said softly. He looked at her. What do you mean? She finally turned to face him. That thing in the dark, it's not just a beast. It's a guardian, a test. My family used to speak of them in whispers. The old ones. Beasts made of shadow and fury, tied to the bloodlines of the ancients. They only wake when a new heir is born. Marco's eyes widened. You mean, the child? She nodded. It senses the change. It's drawn to the power in me. In us. Marco swallowed hard. Then it's not just a storm outside. No, she said, it's a warning, a challenge. By nightfall, the wind became a scream. Metal howled. Dust slammed into the station like fists. Lights flickered again and again. Marco stood guard near the main entrance with a long steel rod. Useless against a real threat. But it made him feel like he was doing something. Then came the sound they both feared. Thud. 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 Heavy footsteps. Too heavy to be human. Marco turned, gripping the rod tighter. Yelra moved behind him, calm but alert. The footsteps circled the station, slow and steady. Then, silence. Marco whispered, "Maybe it left." But Yelra shook her head. "It's waiting." Suddenly the outer door bent inward, something massive struck it. Twice, then 3 times. Sparks flew. The lights died. Only the red emergency glow lit the room. Then it happened. The door flew open, torn from its hinges. A blast of dust and shadow rushed inside, and with it came the beast. It was enormous, 8 feet tall, with skin like smoke, and bones that glowed faintly beneath. Its face had no eyes, only a swirling void. Its claws scraped the floor as it stepped forward. Marco stood in front of Yelra, shaking but firm. The beast growled, a low sound that echoed through the walls. "Go," Marco whispered. "Run." Yelra didn't move. Instead, she stepped beside him, her eyes glowing bright blue. "No," she said. "We face it together." The beast charged. Marco swung his rod, but it passed through smoke. The creature struck him with a massive claw, sending him flying across the room. He hit the wall with a cry of pain. Yelra screamed, not in fear, but in fury. Her body lit up, her veins glowing with pure energy. Her hair floated, lifted by unseen winds. Her feet left the ground. She raised both hands and screamed a word Marco couldn't understand, an ancient word, full of fire. The beast froze mid-step. The room began to shake. Blue light poured from Yelra's skin. Her voice rang like bells and thunder at once. And the beast, this creature of shadow, began to crack and scream. The air split open with sound. Then, silence. The beast collapsed into ash. Yelra dropped to her knees, gasping. Her glow faded. Marco crawled to her side, bruised and bleeding. "You okay?" he asked, breathless. She nodded slowly, touching her stomach. "The child is safe." He sat beside her, holding her close. "You saved us," he whispered. "No," she replied. "You stood for me. That gave me the strength." He smiled weakly. "We make a good team." Later that night, after the power returned and the station was sealed again, Marco looked out the broken window. The sky was clearing. For the first time, stars filled the darkness. He turned to Yelra, who lay resting beside the heater. "We survived," he said softly. She smiled. "And now, they will come." Marco blinked. "Who?" She opened her eyes slowly. "My father. The nobles. The ones who feel the power awakening. They'll want what we've made." Marco held her hand tight. "Then they'll have to come through me." And outside, across the broken moon, a ripple spread in the dust. Something had been born. Not just a child, but a new legend. The message came at dawn. A strange humming sound filled the station as the old transmitter lit up for the first time in days. Marco rushed to the console and watched the screen flicker to life. A red seal flashed, the official crest of Baron Varkul. Yelra stood beside him, her face still calm, but her eyes focused sharply. "Prepare for arrival. By the will of Baron Varkul, your presence is required. Your lives will be spared if you surrender peacefully." That was all the message said. No emotion, no warning. Marco's chest tightened. He knows. Yelra nodded. He felt it. The moment the beast died. The Guardian's fall sent a signal, one that only blood nobles can sense. He knows I've awakened, and that I carry the future. Marco turned to her. "You don't have to go with him. We can run." "To where?" she asked gently. "He'll follow. Not because he wants me back, but because now I have value. The same daughter he mocked he now needs, and the child I carry might be the key to the throne he fears losing." Marco clenched his fists. "Then we fight." Later that day, the ship came. It wasn't just any ship, it was massive, dark, and shaped like a blade. It hovered just above the cliffs, wind from its engines shaking the entire station. Soldiers marched out in perfect formation, their armor black with red visors. Marco stood at the entrance of the station, a tool in one hand, a blaster in the other. He had fixed it from scraps. Baron Varkul stepped down slowly, dressed in royal armor, surrounded by guards. His eyes landed on Marco first. "So," the Baron said with a cruel smile, "you survived. I didn't think you would. But here you are, standing in front of my daughter like some kind of hero." Marco didn't move. "She's not yours anymore." The Baron raised an eyebrow. "She is of my blood. You are nothing more than the ending of a joke I began. But now you've complicated things." Behind him, Yelra stepped into the open. The wind moved her silver-blue hair. Her eyes glowed faintly even in the daylight. She looked taller somehow, stronger. Not just a daughter, not just a wife. She was becoming something more. "Father," she said coldly, "you never cared for me. Not when I was silent. Not when I was weak. But now you come because you smell power." He chuckled. "You speak boldly, child. But you don't understand the game. That child inside you belongs to the House of Varkul. As do you." "No," she said firmly. "The child belongs to no house. And neither do I." Marco stepped forward. "We're not giving you anything. Not her. Not the baby. Not the power." Varkul's smile faded. "Then you choose war." He raised one hand. His guards aimed their weapons. Before Marco could lift his own blaster, a loud boom shook the ground. Everyone froze. Then came a second boom, louder, closer. Dust clouds rose over the hills. Shapes moved within them. Not soldiers. Not machines. Creatures. Marco stared in disbelief as large glowing figures emerged from the horizon, ancient guardians made of stone, fire, and light. The same kind of being that had attacked them earlier. But these weren't attacking. They were kneeling. Kneeling. Before Yelra. The soldiers lowered their weapons in fear. Even Baron Varkul took a step back. "What is this?" he growled. Yelra walked forward, her glow returning. The earth pulsed beneath her steps. "I am not your shame," she said loudly. "I am the child of fire and breath, the last of the hidden blood, the heir not to your house, but to something older." One of the stone creatures let out a deep hum, bowing lower. Marco couldn't believe what he was seeing. The guardians, beings from legend, were answering to her, protecting her, claiming her as their own. Baron Varkul shouted, "This is treason. You stand against your own blood." "I stand for what is right," she replied, "and for the life inside me." The Baron raised his blade, roaring, "Then die with your human." Before the blade could come down, one of the guardians moved. Fast, its arm, made of molten rock, swept the Baron off his feet and threw him across the ground like a rag doll. His armor cracked, his crown rolled into the dirt. Silence. Yelra walked to her father as he coughed, unable to rise. "You lost the moment you laughed at me," she said. "This child will never know fear, because we'll raise them in truth, in strength, and in love." She turned away. Marco walked up beside her. They didn't look back. The soldiers didn't follow. Some dropped their weapons. Some fell to one knee. The old world was ending, and they knew it. As the couple stepped into the light, surrounded by guardians, Marco looked at Yelra. "You're not a joke bride anymore." She smiled. "No. I'm becoming who I was always meant to be." And behind them, the broken rule of a cruel father faded into dust, replaced by something new, something powerful, and something human. Weeks passed since the confrontation on the moon. Baron Varkul had returned to his empire, broken and silent. Rumors spread across the galaxy of a forgotten daughter, a human husband, and ancient guardians who rose from dust to kneel before her. Some laughed, others whispered, but many believed. Inside the station, peace had settled at last. Marco spent his mornings repairing the last broken walls. Yelra spent hers in the light-filled garden they built together from salvaged soil and glowing seeds. The wind still roared beyond the cliffs, but inside their home there was warmth and quiet. Yelra sat on a woven blanket, one hand resting gently on her round belly. She was different now, stronger. Her glow, once faint, now gently surrounded her like a calm fire. The child within her was close. She could feel it every time she closed her eyes, the pulse of something ancient and new growing inside her. Marco walked out with a mug of warm broth, smiling. "You should be resting more." "I'm not tired," she said with a soft grin. "Just listening." He sat beside her. "To what?" "To the stars," she whispered. "They're changing. For centuries they ignored me. But now, I think they're watching." Marco looked up at the sky. It was clearer today. No clouds, no storm. "They probably don't know what to make of you, a once silent daughter who woke up half a planet." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And a human who fixed broken machines, and ended up helping fix a broken girl." He held her close. "You were never broken." That evening a small craft landed near the cliffs. No soldiers, no weapons. Just one old alien, dressed in plain robes, walking slowly toward the station. Marco stepped out, ready for anything. The old alien bowed. "I bring no harm," he said. "I bring only truth. I served the house of Varkul once, but now I serve no house." Yelra appeared behind Marco, her voice calm. "Then why have you come?" The elder raised his head. "To deliver a message, not from your father, but from the Council of Voices. They have seen the signs, the guardians kneeling, the moon glowing with new life. They believe the old age is ending, and they wish to meet the one who may lead the next." Marco frowned. "You mean her?" The elder nodded. "Her, and the child." Yelra stepped forward. "What do they want?" "To listen," he said. "And perhaps to follow." For the first time, Yelra felt the weight of her own name. Not as a daughter of a cruel baron, but as a bridge between two worlds. The elder offered a small glowing stone. "Place this in the fire when you are ready. It will guide you to them." Then he left without another word. That night, Yelra sat by the heater, holding the stone in her hands. Her thoughts were quiet, but deep. Marco watched her. "Do you want to go?" She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "I was once a girl hiding in the corners of a palace. No one saw me. Not even myself. But now, I carry a child who will walk under two suns, and I want that child to know where they came from. What they can become." Marco nodded. "Then we go together." Days later, they placed the stone into the fire. A beam of light shot into the sky, and within hours, a ship arrived, shining and silent. It took them across stars to a hidden world, one that hadn't opened its gates in 1,000 years. The council stood in a circle. Old aliens, tall and wise, each with a mark of power. They did not speak at first. They simply looked, at Yelra, at her child, and at the human who stood beside her without fear. "You are not what we expected," said one elder at last. "But perhaps with you are what we needed," Yelra spoke calmly. "I am not here to rule, only to be heard." They nodded. "Then speak," and she did. She told them everything, of her childhood in shadows, of a human who saw her worth, of the beast in the storm and the fire that bloomed inside her when love replaced fear. She spoke of broken bloodlines and new beginnings, of strength born not from war but from kindness. When she finished, the council bowed. The highest elder said, "From this day the houses are no longer ruled by fear. Let them be guided by balance, and let your child be the symbol of that promise." Marco took her hand. Tears ran down Yelra's face, but they were not sad tears. They were full of peace. Months later, in a garden under twin suns, a child was born. She had her mother's silver skin and her father's steady eyes. When she opened them, the stars above blinked brighter. The guardians rose from their sleep and sang in voices only the wind could carry. A joke had begun it all, but it ended with a crown made of light, held not by greed or power, but by love